Hello everyone, it is Full Shock. Going to be doing a replay review for Ambulatory Cortex. The green player is playing bots. Cortex bots. So he's in a front position. Just as a reminder for failed negotiations, right? It is a 6-2. So you've got two C lanes, which are fighting here, and you've got the strong C lane there, the strong C lane there, and then weak lane, weak lane. So you kind of have to try to help the players in those corners. And then you have the 4 front positions on land. So generally speaking, these two players face off. Ambulatory, who we're looking at, will be facing off versus Mask. This guy will be facing off versus him, and Teal will be facing off versus Blue. This is our tech player. These are our air players. So the other super critical thing, in addition to it being 6-2, is looking at resources. So ton of mexes. It's got geos, which we're all about, right? There's a geo there for the techer. There's a geo for this player. It also has a borderline absurd amount of reclaim, right? It's got like over 5K, 5.4K reclaim. And a ton of it is in the middle. All the reclaims along the shore, generally speaking, but a bunch of it is in the middle. Which means if you're one of these mid players, one of your first goals is to run here and try to secure as much of this metal as possible, because that's super critical. As with all the maps that have sort of like the bodies of water around them, if land isn't able to win early and one of the C lanes wins, generally speaking, whoever wins the C wins the game. So there's a lot of situations, even when you're front, where if you get here and this is like giga porked and you can't like go somewhere else, sometimes you will literally end up like going platypus and trying to do raids like that or something, or like dropping into C. But a lot of times that's more of what the tech player does. So let's get into Ambulatory Cortex, our boy. We are going to go max. It looks like double wind. You actually won't e-stall if you just go max, wind, max, especially because your commander generating 25 E a second, and the time it takes you to walk here will easily gen it. So you'll be a little bit behind on metal if you do it this way. So it's better if you actually go, if you're going wind, to go max, wind, max, and then wind. I also think, I didn't see quite where you dropped your con, but I feel like you probably could have dropped your con. This is like a super minor optimization, but it's definitely something you want to do, right? Where you can build one mechs like here, that mechs there, and then the wind there, and then the mechs a little bit farther off. I think these mechs have to be relatively close, but I feel like you probably could have tightened up this build so that you don't have to move as much, especially early game. It sounds funny, but like the little half seconds that you can save add up to like multiple seconds. And just because of how bar economy works, the more you can shave off in the beginning, the bigger the benefit will be. All right. Unfortunate, wind was good and was dropping, and it's not going to go up too much. I didn't see when it swapped. If you're a newer player watching this and you don't know, if you build wind, the wind will go up or go down in increments of 15 seconds. So if the wind starts to go up, it'll go up for 15 seconds, and you'll get a little bit more used to reading the wind. So here the wind is going up really slowly. So even though it's going to go up for 15 seconds, it's not going to get that much higher, right? And now it's going to go down for 15 seconds. So I'm on board with this solar. I think this solar is where it's at. And we're going to go bot lab. We're going to queue up thugs and a con. So I'm not the biggest fan of this, and let me just explain the reasoning. Thugs are a lot slower They are strong, but generally if you're doing thugs, you kind of want like the thug grave robber push. Your goal should be to get to mid as soon as possible, right? Because the critical kind of goal or resource for this is to get to mid and get this reclaim, and if possible to hold it, right? Because all these other mexes, these are all 1.8s, mids are like 4.8s. So your goal should be to get here as soon as possible with res bots and with units, and grunts are just way faster. The other reason why I wouldn't go thug first here is because even if you start to go here and you have your thugs, if they see that, oh, I can't fight the thugs here, and let's say they have ticks or pawns or grunts, those are all faster units and they can dictate when they want to take the fight. So if they see you here, they can go, okay, well, screw that. And then they can just run and like start harassing your base or doing something else. And like, yeah, maybe you get the medal here, but you're going to get harassed by a bunch of stuff. Whereas if you go grunt, your grunts get here sooner and they can respond to like other scouting attacks, right? They can respond to ticks, they can respond to pawns, they can respond to other grunts. The one good point about thugs here is if you can get them on the island, they're really good at killing commanders. But I don't think you'll be able to get there fast enough, and so that's why I would say go grunt. Something that you commonly see people do on this map is actually buy a transport, like almost right after you get your lab. So you'll literally go like lab, maybe you boost out 1 con or 2 cons. And actually probably just boost out 1 con and then maybe like 1 more solar. And then you can fly your commander up to here, and you can drop like an LLT, a high ground radar. And if you get here before anyone else does and you get LLTs down, the other grunts and other raiding units that come here won't be fast enough to get here before you get LLTs, and they can't man fight your comm, and you're just guaranteed the island. And these mexes are so valuable that it's just like borderline absurd, right? A T1 mex is so cheap, 50 metal. Basically, as long as you have it for almost 10 seconds, it just pays for itself. So if you can get here and drop down those mexes early, it's a massive boost to your economy. And maybe your commander only holds the island for like a minute or 2 minutes, but in those 2 minutes, if you have both those mexes tapped, it's such a massive boost, and it gives you time to reclaim all of this. That's not what happened, but just to kind of give you an idea, and that's a really map specific thing. With that said, the unit choice, I think, whoa, what is our commander doing? Because the devs just hate core, no, I'm kidding. But for some unknown reason, core labs have insane spin up for their bot labs. You can literally build like a third of a solar before this thing opens up, does its little mechanism thing, and starts producing a unit. So I would say try to shift queue a solar right next to your factory so that as soon as it's done, he starts building the solar, and then you'll start building the unit. And generally speaking, you're always going to e-stall and stuff like this. So as soon as you, if you have the solar down, as soon as you run out of energy, right? Like here, you're e-stalling, you can just swap to your solar and build another 20% of it or something. And then when you get a little bit more energy, you keep building him, and you go back and you build the solar more, and then you build him, and then you finish the solar, and you can start another solar, right? And you can keep boosting him out. But the reason you do it like that is because otherwise you're going to have massive E issues, and it's just going to be a lot more inefficient. So try to go back and forth like that. And that's really specific to the core bot lab, which is a little frustrating, but that's life. All right, Khan's out first. I like that. And he's gonna go take Nexus. I would probably do this reverse. I would probably have your Khan boosting your lab, and I would either get out a second con, or I would just start comm walking. Because whenever you're playing on a map like this, where there's a super valuable position, you want to try to get there as soon as possible, because the sooner you can get there and hold it, just the sooner you can get the benefits. And in T1, in this early phase, it's a lot easier to hold an island like this than it is to break it. It's doubly true for failed negotiations, because this water, like once units are in the middle of it, parts of it are so deep that certain units that have like low weapon emitters can't fire out of it. And so like the units will come in here and they'll try to go up, and there will be like some other units here, and the units here can actually shoot at your units, but your units won't be able to shoot back, and it's incredibly frustrating. All right, so we're not, whoa. All right, we were gonna stop, then we didn't stop. Okay, and so now you're gonna get going. Aircon, Eaton, those things, I can get behind it. All right. Always remember, especially early game, it's great for you to have your comm boosting because your comm has so much build power. We're looking at 300 build power versus 100 build power for your lab. However, that build power is only useful if you have the resources to utilize it. If you look at your economy, right, you're producing 118 energy a second. You're using 135. The only reason you can use 135 is because this guy's overflowing energy into you. But you actually, if everything was right and you had the metal and the BP, you'd want to be using 187 energy a second. So this says, hey, I need to build solars. Right? Solars, 150 metal, 0 energy, which means even if you're e-stalling horribly, you can always drop down a solar. And I don't necessarily mind you keeping your commander in base this long, but 9 times out of 10, as soon as you dump your initial metal, you need to start walking your comm. I a lot of times would walk him sooner because I think you could just have like one of these bots boosting, but that's fine. The other thing, if you remember at the start, I did like a mass reclaim of all of this. There's so much e-reclaim here. It's like unreal, right? Just near you is 60k energy. I mean, your entire side is what, 80? I guess we can't really see that well. And your entire side has like hundreds of thousands, right? So you've been e-stalling a lot. If there's trees like this, you might as well utilize them. I probably would have gone like, I think maybe like grunt, bot, grunt, con, res, and then a bunch more grunts. And then your res bots, well, first of all, you would want res bots up here to eat this along with your commander. But the other res bots you have, they can just start eating all this forest, and then that'll help solve your energy problem. You've been e-stalling for a long time just because you didn't fully allocate like where you needed to spend and what you wanted to spend. So when you're going into a map like this, especially for the 5v5 tourney, there's a ton of maps that you probably haven't played a lot. Like, make sure you look at, all right, is wind good? Yeah, wind is really good on this map. Okay, so like, let me think about having a con AFK building wind and back the whole game. There's a ton of reclaim. I need to get a resbot out to utilize that reclaim. Never underestimate how important reading the map is. I think that's something that's super, super critical, that even myself, I'll fail to do it a lot of times. And then I end up throwing a game and I'll be like, wait, why did I do that? So at the start of the game, always just try to double check. I think if you had a slightly different bot build order, you could have gotten here first and you would have been much, much more useful in general. All right. Rally point is here. Minor thing. Just rally it all the way up there. Much, much better. So again, I made this comment before. Your commander's boosting your lab. You've used all your starting metal, right? You're making 9 metal a second. You're spending 9 metal a second. But the BP that's assigned to everything you're building is trying to use 28 metal a second, and it can't. Your commander literally serves 0 purpose right now. He just needs to get going and move up there. I do like this radar, though. All right, what are these guys doing? They just having a picnic, having a little powwow? We're all guilty of this. We all APM stall, right? But these guys need to be up here, especially because there's already rovers and other things, and you want to protect this con that's eating that. Because this is such a critical, well, even if it wasn't a critical position, your commander can defend your base, and before he leaves, you can just drop an LLT like here or something, and then just start walking. These guys need to be up here. They need to be fighting. They need to be trying to hold space. And part of that can, like, if your rally is there, then they'll automatically move there and they'll be a lot closer. Okay, where is our E scaling? So your con is leashed for way too long, right? We already talked about that. You're also not scaling E at all. On a good wind map, the simplest thing to do is literally just have one con, and you either do the split or you just do rows of two so that they don't chain, and literally just have one con, or one con at the start and then two cons later on, just massing wind for you, because you can queue up 50 windmills, and then your E economy is going to scale over time, so you don't need to worry about it, and you don't need to spend APM on it. And windmills are cheap enough, and one con builds them slow enough that you can still build other military units while you're scaling. So I probably wouldn't have built like the radar and the other stuff. I probably would have had one of your dudes building wind, and then the other dude capping mexes. And if your commander's up here, I think it's a whole different ballgame, because you have a ton of thugs, right? Like, what's even here? Okay, so you have, despite all my criticisms, you probably have a much stronger opening than like almost any of your opposing players, right? The guys who are coming to the map, there's 3 blitzes, there's like 2 maces, 3 maces coming, right? This guy, I don't even see units from him. Oh, he's got 1 incisor. Okay. Homie, you got 7 thugs. If these thugs were up here, as soon as the comm comes forward, you can just start shelling him, right? And you can kite a comm forever. You outrange him, you outrange D-gun. As long as you're careful, right? You can just fight move at him and then just walk away as soon as he gets close. You can bully this comm off, and you can take all this metal here, all that metal that you really, really need, and you can cap these mexes, and that's basically 10 metal a second, which would almost double your metal income at this point. But we don't know that because we don't have units in middle, and I think by the time we get there, we're going to run into some other problems. So just a quick recap from where we were and where we are now. Big things I notice are your starting units. Try to have a better mix of units and try to play to the strengths of the map. If you have a resbot like this, he should be eating all of these trees so that you can have more energy. And then try to be scaling energy like with a bot. And you also want to take as many mexes as possible, which is one of the great things that your commander can do, because your commander, even while he's walking here, he can tap all these mexes super quick. Or even, I probably wouldn't tap that one. I'd probably go like, duh, 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 and then you're there. Or if you have units here and you look and there's nothing there, you could even just run straight there. So sorry, those are the 3 things. Starting unit choice, I probably would have gone like grunt resbot with probably another bot in there. You can have a bot boosting your lab, your comm can walk earlier, you have a resbot eating, and then you have someone else building windmills so that you are scaling. All right, so your radar sees that, but we don't quite react. All right, now you're gonna push. Good, good. I don't know what's going on there, but something happened. We're all guilty of this, like it happens to everyone, but idle lab is brutal. Just get in the habit of just having stupidly long queues, right? Now you have your bot boosting that and your commander's boosting that and nothing's happening here. This is one of those things where like, see how your bot is doing this? If you don't issue another order, he's going to sit here. So literally like after you queue up that max, be like, hey man, build this, build this, build this, and then let go. And it's like, that dude is going to have instructions for 20 minutes. And that's perfect because if you start attacking here and you need to micro, he's still doing something. Maybe it's not 100% efficient, but he's still contributing and you're still scaling, right? Good things are happening. If you don't have like a repeat queue on, or if you don't have a long queue, you're going to run into situations like this where homie's idle, homie's idle, homie's idle, homie's idle, right? All four of these things could be doing great things for your economy or great things for the front line, but we just didn't issue enough commands and like a long enough string of commands to actually utilize them. So I said that's another thing you would want to try to work on. I use the royal we there, but you would want to try to work on, I have to work on it too, is having long, like cognizant build orders that it's like, all right, when he finishes that, build that. And let's just have 5 grunts and a res bot and put them on repeat and go. And when your comm walks, right, you can say, hey, build the tower there. And then you hold shift and you say, hey, do that, and then build an LLT there, and then come up here and tap the right. And then it's like your commander has instructions for minutes. So if your thugs are up here and they're fighting, your commander is still contributing. You actually have done quite a bit of damage, but you have all these thugs. These thugs could have done so much more damage, it's unreal. By the time they get here now, you actually could still probably take this. Well, maybe not with the commander there. With the commander and the LLTs going up, it's harder, but like if your comm was here, you even have a res bot to heal. So you haven't scaled your E economy at all. I would recommend, like, it's great to build con turrets when you can actually use them. Something that people do in 1v1 that I think is awesome, and I'll do it like when I'm playing bots and stuff too, is you can do like 5 thugs, 1 grave robber, and then 1 con, because cons give you the 7 energy, right? And so after you do a round of military units, you drop another con, and if you have factory dock on, the con's just going to come out and start boosting. And then it's sort of like you essentially make half a nano turret for every group of military units that you're making. You definitely can drop a con turret if you have the resources, and you should a lot of times for bots, because you just need the BP to push them out. But this is the same situation we were in before, right? Homie, we've got no resources, but we're trying to build. And you've got all this BP, but like you're spending 15 metal a second because you have a bit up here, or sorry, you're not even, like, you want to spend 15 metal a second, and you could because of that, but you're not, because you don't have the energy for it. You only have 70 E a second. You're trying to make, or you're trying to spend 240. If you had an E storage when you were reclaiming this, I think it'd just be a lot better, and you would actually be able to like utilize all of that. Okay, here we go. Nope, we're not going. We all do this at times, but really try to get in the habit of like using the units you make, right? The crazy thing is you see these radar dots, but we haven't even seen what these are. We only know that these are incisors and an LLT. After, like, because you saw the commander and you saw the nettle because it killed your aircon, but like, you don't know what those are. These could be Janus, these could be stouts, these could be anything. These could all be LLTs. The point is, you don't know. You could probably fight that, right? You could just walk up and start harassing it, but because your units are just sitting here, they aren't. So This is another reason why you want to have super long queues, and a great part of having super long queues is doing this is like, if you have really long queues for all of these things, you can just kind of cycle, right? Like you queue up a whole bunch of stuff so that your base is building, and then you come here and you can just dedicate 100% of your focus to thug fighting, right? You can take your 2 res bots, you can say, hey, repeat, and then do an area repeat here, right? And you can take your thugs and you can say fight so that they engage at max range, and then they step forward and they start shooting, and as soon as they're hurt, you back up a little bit. These guys automatically repair. Your eyes are locked on here, and the whole time your eyes are locked on here, you're scaling because you issued a bunch of commands. But we aren't quite there yet, so it's all good. Your biggest issue right now is that your E economy isn't scaling. You're starting to do it now, but I think your initial build really puts you behind, so it's going to be hard to catch up. Like if you had 2 res, even like if this res bot was in, oh yeah, here we go. Yes, this is what we want. So it, like if this res bot isn't healing, he could be eating these trees like this guy is. Yes, good work right here, right? And that's going to give you a ton, and then these guys can harass. So this is 100% the right play. Awesome. It just needed to happen like 3 minutes ago. Perfect. And then you've got the repairs here, so you're able to kind of chip. You're doing a bunch of damage and doing that, and you just want to keep going. Oh, there's a jellyfish now. When your comm's on the front like this, a great little thing you can do for vision is a radar. Not just for the radar, because you already have a radar that sees it, but radars have 680 vision. Radar. LOS is 680, so like you can put a radar here and you'll literally see the opposing shore. They're like, it's like better than a whistler. So and they're really cheap. So don't ever, like when your comms here, never be afraid to just drop a radar right there so that you have vision, because if you have vision of this jellyfish or an enemy, whatever they're called, jellyfish, yeah, I think the corns are an enemies, then you'd be able to kind of attack and harass it. And you could probably come up and alpha strike this, right? You've got 10 thugs. 4. Yeah, I mean, you could just come up and kill this thing really quick if you had vision of it, but because you don't have vision of it and it's just a radar dot, you'd be shooting here and you wouldn't actually be hitting it. So that's why you'd want it. All right, back to the base. We still have a ton of uncapped mexes. I think this is kind of a symptom of your sort of anemic start, but I would say like at 5 minutes, as a general rule, at 5 minutes, 1, build energy storage, because you always want energy storage, especially if you're going to do a wind economy, and when you're frontline, because you want an e-storage for cloak play and for D-gun play, right? If you don't have an e-store and you're trying to move your commander, you're going to have 1 second of cloak before you run out of E, because it's 1,000 energy a second. If you have an e-store, you'd have 7 seconds of cloak, which is all the difference in the world. And same thing, if a bunch of people dive you and the wind is low, it's 500 energy to D-gun, so you D-gun twice and then you'd be out of energy and then you can just die. But if you have an e-store, that will not happen. So 5 minutes, first thing, e-store. Second thing, look on the map at all the untapped mexes, because after like 4 minutes or 5 minutes, every single mex more or less should be tapped. So I would say this poor guy he's just been chilling, but taking a siesta. I can respect that you respect union worker rights and that you didn't want to, press this guy anymore. But I would take one of your cons and I would literally just like hold shift and go, all right, take that, take that, take that, take that, take that, take that, and just like queue them all up. And then after he does all those, you can say, hey, come back here and whatever, build that, or maybe leash to my commander so you can do something else, right? But have a super long queue for him and tap all the other mexes. Occasionally you'll run into a situation where like you tap one here, and then you like double build a mex here and they ping it. It's like, yeah, whatever. Okay, I spent 50 metal. It was a bit of a mistake, but I didn't know, right? Or like you'll look back and you'll see, oh, that's tapped. So you just like remove that one from the queue. But just get in the habit of doing that. 5 minutes, e-storage, and tap all the mexes on the map. on your side of the map. And even if like these are normally your air players mexes, your purple guys mexes, but they're 1.8 mexes, right? And it's 50 metal for a T1. And I always say this all the time. It's like, if you have this for like 27 seconds, it pays for itself. So just tap it. And then later, if he pings it and he's like, hey, what the fuck? My mex. Then you just give it to him, right? And after 27 seconds, it's paid for itself and you've put your team ahead. Or he might not even ping it. He might not even realize, and then you can hold it for a bit longer. I mean, he has a ton of metal, so he doesn't even need it. But regardless, try to maximize all the resources on the map for your team. Okay. So I think this is something that all of us fall into kind of as a trap. And as you start playing with better players, they'll kind of do the opposite of this, and it'll drive you insane because you're like, why didn't I do that? So this is like a gig up orked position, right? Like, we don't fully know, but it's like, all right, there's Wolverines, there's an enemy, there's tanks, there's light tanks. You know, you're looking at, well, let's just look. You guys have like 5.8k metal. Actually, is it equal? No, I mean, they've got like 7k metal on you, right? I mean, some of that's like a mex and stuff, but still. If your commander just stays here and drops like a few LLTs and stuff, if the stouts try to dive him, your commander, granted, if you have E-storage, your commander can normally just cloak and just degun the stouts, and it's not a big deal. And yeah, maybe the Wolverines can pick apart some LLTs, but that buys you enough time and that's fine. But like your thugs can just like go. What? Okay. So anyway, in a normal game, this guy should be here fighting this guy. And there might be like anemones or jellyfish or some other stuff. Normally there's a battle happening here. So my point is, what you should do in a lot of games is actually just like go here and then just start attacking somewhere else on the map, right? If your commander's here with LLTs, he can hold this easy. But if you go with thugs and resbots and you come over here, thugs and resbots just butcher all of this, right? Those LLTs will do nothing to like 10 thugs and 4 resbots. If the comm comes, you can just kite the comm and kill him. But what's going to end up happening is, instead of this guy sitting here and trying to push you, he's going to have to come over here and respond, and you'll be able to like fight him a little bit better here, and you can push here. If he doesn't come over here and respond, you're going to push through and you're going to go kill this guy's base. Well, there's probably shurikens, but okay. There should be shuris, but still, you can kind of come over here and fight. And if this was a normal game and this guy was here, you guys could 1v2 this dude really quick and kill him. And then by the time this guy comes over, you guys can just turn and fight him. Alternatively, right? You've got all of this. Like this guy has blitz. This isn't you, but just as another example of this, right? Look at how free, you guys can't see it because you didn't scout and you don't really have fast units, but like these blitz could literally just do this. There is nothing in front of them. Like literally nothing. But they're not moving because he can't see and you're kind of like locked into your lane. And that's something that a lot of people do, like myself included, where we just tunnel vision. We're like, okay, this is my lane and I need to win my lane, right? It's super important to win, but it's like, no, man, like you can just leave your comm here and pork it and you can just go kill the rest of the map. Probably the single most obnoxious player to do this is Austin. That man will be in every other lane but his own lane, and his lane will literally have like nano, pop up, and you can't break it because the pop-ups have 75% damage mitigation. So you're like, wait, I can't push. But then his army is over here like off fighting in the Crusades like thousands of years ago, winning fights across the map, and it's just absurd. So I digress, but even though this is your lane, If you can't win your lane and impact your lane, just go somewhere else. Totally fine. Leave a defensible force like your commander here and just go somewhere else. You don't need to, you're not like married to this lane, right? As long as you can hold it. If you can't win your lane, go win another lane. So, oh no. Okay. So this is like one of the scary things, right? This was porked and you just committed in all these thugs and so many of them died and you didn't really get a good trade because it's a defensible position and there's units here. So if you had gone somewhere else, you would have been fine. You can't just walk your common like this if you don't have enough energy to cloak, because they'll be able to hit it. The only time you could try to do this is if you can cloak, because then the radar dot will be, you know, somewhere else, and then a lot of the shots will potentially miss. Or if you have a jammer like here, well, core jammer sucks, but like if you had a core jammer and then you could walk up cloaked and then come up and degun them, I would say it's incredibly rare when I think it's good to exchange your commander for an entire army. I think a lot of times it's decent if you can trade calm for calm, like if you hug them and you can guarantee that you get the reclaim. But just putting your calm up here to try to kill this army is crazy, because this army, unless he horribly mismicros it, should just be able to kill your calm. Best case scenario, you come up here and you kill all these tanks and your calm dies, and this dude's commander just walks up here and starts eating it, right? And your thugs that you just lost a bunch of are gonna come up here and try to fight, but now there's wolverines and a jellyfish, and there's, well, actually the jellyfish might die from the explosion depending on where your calm dies, but still, like, the wolverines can chip at your thugs, and then when you get in close enough to attack the wolverines, this dude can just degun, or he can cloak and come at you, right? Like, you lost your initial advantage of thugs versus commanders, because now he's going to have the energy to actually like cloak and degun and do other things. So try not to make these trades. Try to keep your commander, try to keep your commander alive as long as possible, because worst case scenario, you're going to end up in this situation where you feed your calm and you're kind of like, well, what do I do now? And a calm is amazing for stouts, right? The one reason why people don't spam stouts at the beginning of the game is because commanders can degun them. Once your commander dies, if he has a bunch of stouts, you're in a ton of trouble. All right, let's go back. Let's take a look at where'd the calm here go? All right, so this guy capped all those maxes. That's your tech player. That's cool. This max still uncapped. These dudes are just chilling. When you do the area reclaims, obviously you can't do a full map reclaim, because then your dudes will be like, hey, let's go up here and mine these trees for some reason. But the easier thing to do is just like hold shift and you just do like area one. So you go like that, like that, like that, like that, like that, right? And then it's like, then they're out of harm's way, but then you can issue a really long string of commands. Whenever I'm doing resbot stuff like that, I'll do like the whole long string of commands, and then I'll normally try to rally them like somewhere near the front, because everyone APM stalls, right? So like you'll be fighting here and you'll just forget that you have these resbots, and these resbots could be over here repairing, doing other stuff. All right, so we are scaling E. We're still pumping thugs. It's 9 minutes. Do you know where your T2 is at? In terms of other timings, I would say like 6 to 7 minutes on a map that has a techer, a backline map like this that has a techer. We got to be looking at our boy. Okay. Well, that's incredibly unfortunate. So in normal game, this guy should have had T3 like a while ago, but we're looking here and we see in a dream world, he should have T2 at like 6 to 8 minutes. You should buy T2. When it gets to like 9 or 10 minutes, if you can't buy T2, you need to think about just going T2 yourself. When you're in these situations where you're like, okay, I need to try to break my lane, or like, I want to try to like fight my lane, these thugs probably aren't going to be able to break this. Doubly so because there's a commander here now, right? So you need to think about, all right, if I can't break this, can I just back up a little bit and can I hold it with a minimal number of units? And then can I tech myself or can I do something else? You're kind of like locked into building thugs, but you don't need to be, right? Like there's no reason for you to try to break this pork and to be locked into building thugs because you're not going to be able to fight it. Like if you did want to try to break pork here, you would need to go rocket bot, but there's tanks, so you can't, and you don't have a comm. So I would say probably just back up and defend this max with minimal stuff. Maybe get a con up here and you could, well, you have a con up here. Just drop everyone's favorite Dragon's Maw. Claws are better, but you could drop Maws. And then eat your lab and just go T2 because, oh, your guy's going T2 here. You can just buy T2 from this dude, but you need T2. Like if you don't have T2 by 10 minutes, I'm not going to say you're griefing, but you are really hurting your own game. Okay. So I would say even in this situation, right? Like you don't need to keep antagonizing this guy. I mean, you can because you have res bots and you want to try to like do as much damage and repair them. But if you don't think you can take this fight and hold the reclaim, it's a little dangerous to force it because if you guys trade relatively equally, he still has a comm and his comm comes up and just ruins the day. Wow, that trap. That was loud, a little bit louder than I thought it would be. Anyway, I would say stop making units, eat your lab, funnel your metal into this guy, get a T2 con and start upgrading these mexes. And even if you're stockpiling a ton of metal, that's completely fine because each T2 mex is 600 metal. So you're going to need 1800 just to up these mexes. So it's fine to stockpile a little bit before there. I'd also probably drop another con turret. I don't know how much more of this I'll watch because I feel like you're sort of in a rough position now. So it's going to be pretty hard to really recover from it, but we'll see. Also, this uncapped mex. We got to cap our mexes, homie. So if you have Maws and some other stuff here that can defend, let's just look at the rest of the map again. This dude has an agitator, which if you just ran at it, you could kill along with his comm. Now there's fiends here that you'd have to deal with, but I know you want to kill that mex, but if you had if you just had like a little force of grunts, or even just with your thugs, you could just run over here, right? And you could do a ton. Alternatively, this dude has shelled so much, like, just go there. Like, look at what's here. There's a commander. Oh, actually, I take that back. Don't go there. There's hounds. But you probably could have done damage there before the hounds were in, because if he tacked, then there was a time where he was weak. But this is kind of the scary thing, right? Like, let's look at your... This dude has been scaling his E, right? And he actually somehow has less metal a second than you do. Oh, because he just lost that max. But he's at 808 energy a second. You're at 500, and the wind is like max. A bunch of his is in A solars. So I would say just try to scale a little bit more. Let's see. What else? Yeah, you don't need to try to break this lane. If you can't break it, just go somewhere else. You know, pork your lane and then head on out. Okay. It's 15 minutes and we don't have T2 maxes, so that's super brutal. I'm probably gonna stop there. Big things. Try to focus on reading the map a little bit more, and I feel like if you can read the map a bit better, it'll dictate your unit choices better, and then you'll be way more effective early on, right? Like, you e-stalled for the first like 8 minutes of the game. If you just had 1 or 2 res bots eating all these trees, it totally would have been awesome, and you probably wouldn't have had that problem. There's all this metal in the super value mexes. If you bought a trans or even just calm walked way earlier, you could have come up here and you could have held that. But you got to play to where the resources are on the map, because if you can hold those, even if they're building better units or whatever, a lot of times you just win through sheer metal, right? If they bring 5,000 units worth of metal and you bring 10,000 units worth of metal, you win. So try to get there, try to get where the resources are and fight it. At the beginning of this, I would also say open grunt instead of thug, because you want to get here fast, like kill the other res bots, and then you can have your res bots eating stuff, and then you can switch to thug later. Your scaling, your e-scaling probably could have started sooner, in part because you were stalling for so long. I missed this before, but that's not ideal. I think, you probably had, I think I saw in the thread, you were like, oh, I don't have factory guard on. Make sure you have factory guard on. I think that's probably just the setting thing that you messed up on, which happens to all of us. Other big thing, right? You had like the con that's at here for 5 minutes, and you had like your other people doing stuff. Just have stupidly long queues, right? Build all the wind here, then build an LLT, then build anti-air, then, you know, go over here and sing Kumbaya, and then get me a gauntlet, and then build a radar, and then build a like, just have a really long queue so that when you end up in the fights like this, you're still being productive everywhere else on the map. Walk your comm earlier. Also, remember, build power is only useful if you can pump resources into it. So like there was multiple times where you had like no energy and no metal, but you still had like your nano, the con, and your commander boosting your lab. That's pointless. Just have them do other tasks that actually contribute. Your con could, you know, like your con could come over here and eat the energy, so you have a little bit more E. I would also, like we talked about, you should have come walked earlier, but that's a thing. In terms of timings, 5 minutes, I would recommend around 5 minutes, not like 5 minutes on the dot, but around 5 minutes, get an energy storage so that you have energy in case you want to build like the Geo, or if you want to build A solars, because A solars are 4K energy. So if you don't have the 4K energy saved already and the wind drops, sometimes you get screwed. Whereas if you have the energy storage, a lot of times you can just cover that, right? And because you want it for cloak plays, like when you ran your comm up, if you had a cloak, you probably could have gone all the way there and then gotten D-guns off or something else. And also around the same time that you're looking at your energy storage, tap all the mexes on the map. It's like 15 minutes. I'm pretty sure no mex has been built on this, right? If you think it's 2 metal, you know, we'll just average it to 2 metal a second. So it's 120 metal every minute, and you probably could have capped it 10 minutes ago. Maybe, right? I mean, like the amount of metal lost by not having that is super substantial. So get your e-storage, tap all the mexes, 6 to 8 minutes. If you have a backliner, even if you don't have a backliner, look around and just find out who has T2 and try to get T2 as soon as possible. If no one has T2, think about maybe just stalling your lane and porking it, and then like doing a combined T2, say, hey, go T2, or I'll go T2, and then you eat your lab and just drop your own T2. Lastly, I feel like your micro actually wasn't that bad. Well, your micro wasn't that bad in a lot of these fights. Like you came up and fought, you backed off, you were repairing. So I think that's fine. Just these guys sat around for a long time, and you really want to try to make use of all your units. So even if you only have a couple, they should be up here harassing and fighting. I think you probably could have held this island when you had like the 7 thugs and your enemies had like 4 incisors or something. So do that. Yeah, I think that's probably the gist of it. I will stop it there, but that's sort of the summary. If you have other questions or want kind of like other follow-up, let me know. Just ping me on the Discord thread. Good luck.